our first craft beer is finally ready for tasting, so it's time to see whether it lives up to the hype. Well, at least the hype I've been bragging about in my sales emails. And I'm going to be testing it to the homebrew version of this beer we made on the channel a few weeks ago. So, can homebrew dreams come true, or are we about to face a brutal reality check? Hey craft beer explorers, today we're here to taste test the pilot version of our first ever craft beer, F-Wit Dark Wheat Beer. So we're back at the local brewing co who brewed our beer, so buckle up as we're going for the taste test and see how it compared to the homebrew version of this beer. Let's go.
The beer had been fermenting for about 2 weeks at this point. There is a little bit of carbonation, but not at proper serving levels. The beer was also about 10 degrees, though it felt a little bit warmer than that in the glass. So the main thing is that it is flatter and warmer than what it would be served at. So keep this in mind during the video. This taste test is to see how the beer is tracking along compared to my expectations of what it should turn out like. So if you're a home brewer, this is like tasting your beer as you bottle or keg it. You get some idea of what it will taste like, but it isn't anywhere as good as the final thing. This is a big moment for us, as it marks the official transition from home brewing to having our beer brewed professionally under contract.
Well, it does smell similar to the homebrew at least, so that's a good start.
So filming didn't quite go to plan after this point, as a little human related to me decided to make a fuss. So this beer is 5%. When I was tasting it, it had a dark opaque body with a tan or off-white head, similar looking to the homebrew version. There was this phenolic aroma from the particular yeast used not evident in the homebrew, though not unexpected given we are using Belgian yeast. It still had elements of clean coffee roastiness coming through and a smooth coffee linger on the finish. There was also that accentuation of a crisp wheat vibe near the end as well from the flaked wheat. Both of these elements are similar to the homebrew, and I absolutely love this about this beer. One thing that was different to the homebrew was the phenolic notes from the yeast being prevalent throughout. It was still nicely balanced and the bitterness was in a good sweet spot. The phenols did stand out a little bit more than I expected. I think being a bit cooler, having more carbonation and time will help the beer balance out. Similar to the homebrew, I did find that the beer wasn't at its best right when it finished fermenting. So with a little more time for the flavours to meld, this beer will be tasting great. Overall, I was really happy with how this beer was tracking. Once I had finished my taster, I was craving more. I cannot wait for this to hit the taps. So now we have a 4.5% bottle conditioned version of the homebrew that we made a couple weeks ago. Now, it is important to note that this is actually a bottle conditioned version, which will become apparent when I explain after I give my thoughts on what the beer tastes like. If you're new here, we previously brewed a pilot version of this pilot craft beer at home, so I suppose that makes it a double pilot, and I documented the homebrew for you on the channel to see. We then compared the homebrew version to commercially available versions of dark wheat beer, and then last week you got to see behind the scenes of how this pilot was brewed right here. Hit subscribe so you can see how you can explore craft beer, and give us a like if you love craft beer, or at least this video.
Homebrew version's a little bit more foamier, given that the other one's not carbonated just yet. The head's not as dark, but the colour of the beer is pretty much the same, which is black as night, you can't see through. In terms of aroma, this is probably a little bit more estery than the other one, though it's probably a bit more banana, whereas the other one, or a bit more banana and clove, whereas the F-Wit is more a little bit more phenolic-y in those esters that come through, but I think this is a bit more estery than the other one. So again, I think some of the sweet esters coming through a bit more in this beer rather than the other one, but this one, like obviously carbonation, temperature, totally different, so we'll have to wait till that's fully carbonated to get the full end effect of that. But yeah, still got like that similar kind of roasty note on the end, which is good.
So to summarise all that, essentially there was a sweeter, more banana ester-like note that was coming through in the homebrew version. However, I was a little surprised as previous tastings of the homebrew version did not give as much of a strong banana character and the roast was much more prevalent. The comparison did also highlight that our Pro beer did suffer from a lack of carbonation and needed a little more conditioning time. But before we get more into that, what did the experts think? The Pro version seemed to have less of a yeast character to it. This was probably most likely due to the yeast strain, and I also think that the warmer ferment of the homebrew may have played a role as well. The overall consensus was that it was pretty much the same beer and that the essence of the homebrew had been captured. When probed and told that the world would blow up unless they give a single preference, the favourite was the Pro beer. With a little less yeast character coming through, it was considered to be a little bit more drinkable and that it may have a little bit more of a wider appeal. But there was something about the comparison and the taste test and this whole yeast character thing that was still bugging me, and I'm not ready to call the beer as passing or failing the test just yet. When I got home later that night and tried the beer, I noticed something, and it seemed that the taste test comparison was a little bit unfair. Firstly, our Pro beer needed a little bit more time to reach its final state for a proper taste. I also brought a bottle conditioned homebrew to the brewery. Bottle conditioning adds sugar for a secondary fermentation to naturally carbonate the beer, but it also results in extra yeast and flavour compounds being produced in the bottle. A fairer comparison would be with the keg version of the homebrew, which doesn't go through this secondary fermentation process. The keg version was very similar to the Pro beer. The banana notes were not as strong and the ester levels were a bit closer. Both of those showcasing the smooth roasted character. The bottle conditioned version had a much stronger banana and yeast character to it. This comparison made me realise that I've never done a side by side of a keg versus bottle conditioned beer. I want to explore this in a future video. If you'd be keen to see that, let me know in the comments below.
Oh look, I'm back again. But why do you ask? Well, it's to taste beer. But why am I back to taste beer? So today the beer should be properly carbonated and should be cold and ready to go, ready to be kegged soon. So back to see whether it does actually finally pass the taste test. Last time I was here, the beer was a little bit flat and warm and wasn't quite in its finished state. So yes, it had finished fermenting, but it wasn't quite what it was when it was being packaged. So I'm interested to see what it will taste like after a little bit more time to carbonate properly and get into that finished state. I also found the taste tests a little bit difficult to do as well. So sort of think of it like this. Imagine making a pizza and taking it out of the oven halfway and then comparing it to a fully finished pizza that you've just made previously. Like it's a little bit difficult to see what it's really like. I mean, yeah, you can sort of judge like where it's going, but in terms of actually what the finished pizza will be like, a little bit difficult. The half-baked pizza doesn't quite give the full picture. So I'm not quite sure if it was clear at the start of this video or not, but that was sort of like on my mind the whole time and has been on my mind the whole time, and I really just want to see what the beer will taste like in the finished state. Yeah, so on the aroma, definitely getting that wheat Christmas, a little bit of clove character, a little bit of coffee coming through as well, nice and balanced, nice and clean as well. And then the mouthfeel, it's like firm enough so that you know it's there, but not too firm that it's like a really heavy drink. It's nice and balanced, not too bitter as well. The finish isn't too bitter, the finish is quite smooth. The mouthfeel is quite creamy and smooth as well. And then yeah, you get that nice smooth, like sort of coffee and sort of roast grain tones with a little bit of this like accentuation at the end of like wheat crispness or sharpness as well. I think it's like a little bit, maybe a little bit less than the homebrew, but it's very similar. Like it just definitely captures the essence of what I was trying to achieve with this beer. So I think they've done a great job here. Yeah, they're just that sort of like lingering smooth coffee note on the end afterwards, and a little bit of like chocolate and sort of deep roast grain as well. It's very moreish. And yeah, I think I could just sit here all day and drink this.
The harsh phenolics had settled down and had become more of a sweet clove. That roastiness was coming through a bit more than last week, and the flavours had combined together well. There were no more of those harsh flavours standing out. I was so happy with the result.
So this has been an absolutely amazing experience here to actually see my homebrew recipe go onto a professional system, to an actual real brewery that makes real beer for real people. It's absolutely super exciting, and to see that it actually does capture the essence of what I was trying to do with the homebrew is absolutely amazing.
It's got that smooth coffee, a little bit of wheat sharpness. It's balanced, easy to drink. Yeah, it's got some layers of some complexity and nuance to it, so you can explore it, but it's not too difficult to drink. Really fun to drink, really moreish. It's something you can ponder over, but something if you wanted to have a few, you can also have a few as well. I think it's just got this, I don't know, for me, it just hits this great sweet spot of beers where it's got enough flavour in there to really excite you, give you something different, unique flavour profile that not many beers have, but it's not impossible to drink. So I'm super excited to see that get out there. In terms of other learnings, so if you're comparing homebrew to a professional brew, like if you want to recreate something at home and you want to compare it to a beer out there, like you want to make a clone or something, it's probably more accurate to try a kegged version of your beer and compare it to the beer that you're trying to recreate, because bottle conditioning will introduce some different flavors in there that you will not get when going straight from fermented to keg. And so I'm definitely going to take that on board. Subscribe, join the mailing list at the list below so you can know exactly when and where F-Wit will be hitting the taps near you. Also let me know where are your favorite craft beer venues so I can get this beer to you as well. And also don't forget to explore some of the other videos that we've got on the channel. And if you're an Australian craft beer venue, email me at the email below so you can get F-Wit in your venue soon, as I've got an absolutely tremendously amazing deal for venues who are bold enough to take on this new and daring craft beer. So until next time, maybe watch one of these videos here that YouTube recommends, and then until then, cheers.